This week, we give our first impressions of the all-new, all-electric Polestar 2. We discuss the updated Nissan Frontier and find out why some dealers really want you to turn in your lease early. Next, on Talking Cars. Hey, welcome back. I'm Keith Barry.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And I'm John Lincove.
And, normally we're a three-person podcast, but I see we have a fourth today who's actually very instrumental in some of our testing, right, Emily?
Yep, this is Nehemiah. We call him Nemo at home, but yeah, he helps out with testing all the time.
That's wonderful. It looks like he's testing the strength of your headphones right now. But to start off, we're going to talk about a car that it has been a long time waiting for it. There is a new Nissan Frontier. Finally, the last Frontier came out in about 2005. The prior Frontier was, there have been three popes, three presidents. I think I was still in college when it came out. So it's been a while. This is a mid-sized truck, competes with like the Chevy Colorado, the Ford Ranger, Honda Ridgeline, now the Jeep Gladiator, and of course the Toyota Tacoma. It's a rough and tough truck. It looks a lot rougher, a lot tougher. It gets the same engine as what was updated for 2020, which is a V6, but with a 9-speed automatic. You can get rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. We estimate it's going to be around $27,000 to start when it goes on sale this summer. John, what's the big deal with a small pickup truck like this, and what's the big deal with a Nissan finally getting an update?
Well, first of all, it has a competitive product that they can sell. It's just outdated. It doesn't have the technology. It doesn't have the creature comforts, let alone, fuel economy, let alone, the towing or cargo carrying capacities that all of its newer competitors have. Puts it at a disadvantage. You can play so far on price, but if it's just not really even a viable option, a comfortable option, an appealing option, and oftentimes price isn't even going to matter if you're not going to enjoy the vehicle. It's pretty impressive that, they're keeping a lot of the frame and chassis the same, but they're putting on all new sheet metal and really updating the interior, updating safety, which is really a big thing, putting on all the, a forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, so big stuff like that. But even just the tailgate, in your story, you talked about the tailgate won't slam down anymore, just small little modern conveniences, let alone Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Because let's be honest, yes, lots of people use these for work, but lots of people use these kind of as a family and a play and a maybe work vehicle as well. So, having something that actually isn't going to beat you up, it goes a long way.
That's where the safety ratings come in too. Now, so the big questions here, and I don't, when I was writing about this from the debut, like, oh, great, it looks better. Of course, all trucks look rugged nowadays. They have to. But the big questions are about fuel economy, because the last one, fuel economy was not great. And also safety, because it was such an old design. It did not score well. It was one of the only cars that didn't get, good across the board in those safety tests. But those remain unanswered. We don't have those answers yet. But Emily, that's a big deal, right? In terms of making sure that a car is safer. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah, you want vehicle platforms to be updated. You want to see redesigns, especially with how quickly the safety technology is advancing these days. There's so many changes that have come about in terms of passive safety features and all these new advanced driver assistance systems. So for a vehicle that hasn't been touched in so long, to get an update is huge and super important. And I think for its demographic that it serves, they're going to be really appreciative of the fact that now they have a vehicle that is at par with the rest of, its peer group, and in some ways even ahead of its peer group, because now it comes standard with AEB and FCW, unlike, the Colorado or the Canyon, where those aren't even available, right? So, those are really good strides that they're making for their consumer base.
Now, John, this is, I mean, Emily mentions the consumer base, and I know that, Nissan's come out with a new Pathfinder too. What's going on with Nissan?
Look, they have a lot of products that have been coming out, but they're also expanding in, like you said, Nissan Sentra small sedan, Nissan Altima midsize sedan, very, very good products. Really great redesigns recently. Now we have Pathfinder coming out, the 3-row SUV. One of the big things that for people to look at though is, maybe not jump on the new Frontier, the minute it comes out, because if a manufacturer is churning out a product, moving to something new, churning out a product, moving to something new, what happens years 2, 3, or 4? Does the focus get lost? So look at how some of the redesigns work out. Look at the second and third year reliability on those products, and then say, okay, I'm going to be willing to take a leap on the second or third year Frontier. But if those Altimas and Sentras fall off the cliff, so to speak, with the reliability in their second and third years, don't run out that first year Frontier either.
So from a brand on the mend to a brand that is all new, we bought a car, which we do pretty often, which usually isn't that momentous an occasion, but this time it was a little different because the car we bought was a 2021 Polestar 2. The Polestar, it's a $62,000, about what we paid for it. Electric car, dual electric motors, 406 horsepower, all-wheel drive, seating for 5, kind of a hatchback sort of design, and a range of about 233 miles. John, what is a Polestar? Now, I'm a guy you can see the 240 speedometer in the background. I know what Polestar is, but also this isn't the Polestar that I know.
Well, so Polestar is the North Star.
Okay, can we bring it down to earth?
Bring us down to earth. Okay, so Polestar, historically, it came from a racing team that then was working, building performance versions of Volvos, and then Volvo bought the racing team, brought it in-house, then they were part of Volvo, and then when Geely, which is a Chinese automaker, bought Volvo back in, I believe, 2010, they came along, they're part of the ride, and now Polestar has been changed to be performance EVs.
So it'd be like if AMG were Mercedes' electric division.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, now Volvo itself is also going to be making EVs, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here. And also the car itself, they're not sold through Volvo dealers, even though they kind of are. We got ours from like a pop-up shop in Manhattan. Yeah, it got delivered to us, and Emily, you actually used this car as like a daily driver for a little while. What did you think of it?
Yeah, so I was pretty frustrated really early on in my experience. I haven't driven a lot of the EVs, and so some of it is maybe just like the steep learning curve that I feel like is there. So I got into the car and I was like, darn it, how do I even turn it on? And so turning it on was a feat. And then I wanted to turn it off and stepped out of the car to ask someone, and the car magically turned itself off. So I was like, never mind. I no longer have that question. And then
Emily, we're millennials, and we don't like the fact that cars don't have on-off buttons. Okay, this isn't just old curmudgeons who are upset about this.
Well, see, you're kind of an old curmudgeon at heart, though, so I'm not sure if both of us are the best to determine whether or not all millennials will like this. But my main struggles really came with the fact that I had Micah with me, and I needed to be able to install his car seat. And in case you haven't met me before, this is part of what I do for my job. But that being said, every vehicle is different, and every manufacturer has different instructions for various things. And it was difficult for me even to be able to install my car seat easily. I couldn't route his top tether for a forward-facing car seat. And while, that is not a requirement, it is best practice. And knowing the safety benefit that it provides, I was really frustrated that I tried to install his car seat in the outboard seat and I could not because I couldn't route that tether through. I also had to climb into the hatch to be able to get the cargo cover off and to attach the top tether, which any day that I literally have to climb into the vehicle is not a great day for me, especially when I'm in a rush. And I was that day. So before we even got going, it wasn't a great experience. That being said, driving wise, I didn't love the one pedal setting. I thought it was really aggressive, that those regen brakes. Once I switched it to low, it was better. But I liked it best, honestly, when I was on the highway and I had cruise control on, because I felt like the car was finally doing its own thing the way that it's supposed to, maybe designed to do so without my input. So it was better that way.
It seems like it's sort of the worst possible combination of an all-new car brand that doesn't quite have its footing and the things that we don't like about Volvo, as opposed to the many, many, many things that we do like about Volvo. And the controls, basically, so the car is powered 100% by Android, which means that you have to download. There's no CarPlay app yet. There's going to be, we were told. But that means that you have to download your own. You have to log into your Google account, or if you don't have one, you have to create one and download versions of Spotify, Maps, things like that. You can't download Waze to the car because it only uses Google Maps. And it'll, that's because it'll tell you how much range you have when you put in for a particular destination. The problem is that some of those were overly optimistic. And that's something we heard over and over and over again, is that the range estimates were overly optimistic. It's only a 233 mile range on a car that's $62,000. I mean, you're looking at competitors out there like the Mach-E, you're looking at competitors from Tesla, you're looking at new ones coming from Nissan, and with so many other drawbacks. And I haven't even gotten into the seating position, that you feel like you're, driving in a tank. And
did you raise yours all the way up? Because I had to raise it all the way
as
up,
far as I could possibly go. And then seeing over your shoulder, the back view, the rear 3/4 view is more like a rear, 1/8 view.
It's like you're looking through a little, like one of those toy viewfinders.
Yeah.
It seems to be a vehicle that is aspiring, but they're 5 years ahead of where the industry is going, or is right now. It's everything's going to be through the screen, and we're going to have the advanced controls, but the fundamentals are lost on it. Part of it's really advanced, and part of it, the range, for example, look, 140 mile range is what some of the people, some of our testers saw in real life use, and that means turning off the heat and using just the seat heaters, so that they can eke their way back to, to get, the car home, or get to a charger, or drop it off at the test track. So, there's a lot. It's a first product. Right now, there's a lot of products coming out that seem much more fully baked
for $20,000 or $30,000 less.
Right. Like the Ford Mustang Mach-E you mentioned,
like the Niro, like the,
the Kia Niro, the Hyundai, Hyundai Kona EV. Look, you could buy the Jaguar I-Pace, and it, it does fairly well. So tough start for the Polestar too. Just getting its break-in miles.
Yeah. So if you want to read more about it, I mean, we go into a lot more detail. It's over at consumerreports.org. We have had a lot of people spend a lot of time in this car, and it's an interesting one. So before we move on we will, we just wanted to take a moment to let you know about the Talking Cars donation program. If you're not aware, CR, we're a nonprofit. That means that the work that we do is funded by memberships as well as donations. So if you're able to give, it really does help us keep doing this work that we do. It helps keep us talking cars. So you can find more information at cr.org/give talking cars. That's cr.org/give talking cars. And now on to some of that work that we do, is answering your questions. Our first question is from Wesley, who writes from Malaysia. Wesley says, would CR recommend a purchase of a new Lexus GS 350 now that the vehicle is being discontinued? I figure I might be able to find some good deals. Is it a mistake to invest in a car that won't be produced anymore? Now, John, there's a difference between like buying a Lexus that's being discontinued and buying like a 2011 Saab 9.5, right?
Yes, I mean one's a classic, and one's the Lexus. So, right, Pete? Yes.
No.
But seriously, look, the Lexus GS is being discontinued because it's not a platform that Lexus wants to invest in. Toyota wants to invest in. Big sedans, not as popular these days. SUVs are where it's at. You see Chevrolet dropped the Impala, for example. You see, other manufacturers dropping, smaller sedans, big sedans. Not a surprise. Lexus, made a really nice GS 350 when they last redesigned it, and they kind of just it's been there. I would have no problem buying this car. I would have no problem saying buy a 10-year-old Lexus GS right now and keep it for another 10 years. I don't know the parts supply, situation in Malaysia. I don't know the volume of sales. I can't speak to that. But I would say to anybody, if you like the car, go ahead and get it. You're not going to have engine problems. You're not going to have transmission problems. Yes, the electronics and some of the infotainment stuff may become outdated, but I would say it's going to be a solid car. I would certainly buy it. I would recommend buying it. They're very reliable. I would have no qualms about that.
And they're a blast to drive, so enjoy it too. Prashant from Boston says, I drive a leased 2018 Honda CR-V with around 15,000 miles. The lease ends in a few months. The dealer's reached out to me saying that he would like to repurchase it from me and is willing to offer up to 120% of the Blue Book value and will also give us a special price if we buy another Honda from him. Is this a common practice? Does he know something I don't know? Emily, you've got some of these in the mail too, right?
Yeah, we actually just got one this week. My husband has a 2015 A3 that we had bought used, and he literally just got a letter 2 days ago offering. It's the same percentage, Prashant. Maybe all the dealerships use the same number, but 20% above the value. And we own our car. Or, we bought it. We're not leasing, but what is the advice? Do they know something that we don't know about?
They do know something we don't know. They know how much this car, they know how much they know how much they need used cars in the lot, because right now, due to COVID and a bunch of other factors, used cars are in demand. What's especially in demand is a used car with very low miles. And a 2018 CR-V is a very desirable car. 15,000 miles aren't a lot. So there's a chance that this dealership is going to be able to sell this car for a lot of money, and that they need that car now because someone is asking for a CR-V with around 15,000 miles. Now, there are words in these offers that are like up to, and that was these sort of weasel words, we can offer you up to 120% of the book value. That, it's 5% is up to 120%. But the good news is that when you bought this car, when you leased this car, you signed a contract. And in that contract, there's something called the buyback number. And it's based on the residual. And what that means is basically what Honda assumed that 2018 CR-V would be worth 3 years down the road. Back in 2018, nobody knew anything about COVID or anything that was going on now, but they thought this car might be worth X amount of dollars. Chances are they probably underestimated, because nobody expected the used car market to be this hot. So go and look and see if that buyback number, and you can call Honda and ask, and they'll give you what that number is. If that number is less than what these cars are selling for at the local Honda dealership, or also less than what a trade-in offer is from a place like CarMax or Carvana or one of those places where you can sell your used car to them, there's a chance that you could actually make money off your lease, especially with a low mileage car. And that's some advice to take a look at. But when it comes to whether this is called a pullback offer, where they're trying to pull you in, it's because the dealer needs a new car customer. That's you. And they need a used car customer. And that's the person who's going to buy your CR-V when it's turned in. So I'd handle it like a separate transaction. If you don't need a new car, don't worry about it. But, John, what would you do in this situation?
I would certainly do that research. I would make sure that any of the costs associated with registering the car in your name, if you take ownership of it, so whether you're getting a loan or you're going to pay money straight out to buy it, basically a cash deal, what that's going to cost you, registering it, taxes, if you have to register it, and when you register it in your name, if there's a sales tax component for the state of Massachusetts. So doing all that research, you don't want to get in there and all of a sudden find out you're making $50 and, overall, just because of of the different costs. Of course, if you then trade it in and get an elevated cost, often you could then lower the sales tax you pay on the new car because they take that out of the price. So there's advantages to doing it. Certainly don't just run in there, puppy dog eyes, thinking like, oh, the dealer wants me and they're my friend. They're reaching out to you for a reason, and that's to make money, not to, get a 10 on a survey.
Yeah, but you can't. There is a chance that you could get a good deal on your next car off of this. So Rajesh from San Francisco asks, I am looking to get a fun-to-drive automatic transmission car that can accommodate my family of 4, which currently includes 2 child seats. Our budget is up to $40,000. Emily.
So as somebody told me, enjoyable is relative. The way that I chose to think about enjoyable for this particular question is think about how much you'll enjoy safely being in the car as a family and all the adventures you'll get to take. So, Rajesh, because of the fact that you said that you have 2 child seats, I'm thinking more from the perspective of you. I don't know how old your kids are, and I don't know which seats they're in currently, nor do I know if you plan to expand the number of child seats that you may or may not be having. But thinking about if this is a vehicle that you're going to be in for a while and your children are going to grow in it, then you're going to need to have something that meets more than just your current, circumstance, right? So their car seats are going to change. They're going to grow. They might move out of their car seats, etc. So in terms of, trying to make sure that you really get the most bang for your buck in terms of safety, the vehicle that I thought of is the Nissan Rogue. The new Nissan Rogue, which we currently have in test. Our test car cost $33,230, and that was the SV trim with the premium package. And still going through the paces with us, and it doesn't have the IHS crash test scores up yet, so definitely wait for those before you make your complete decision. But the reason that I chose this is because, looking at the rear seat, I can see that there are dedicated lower anchors for every seating position, which if you were to get the Rogue Sport, it's not there in the center seat. So just something to be aware of. There are differences between the Rogue and the Rogue Sport. And the contours, the geometry of the seat make it so that, it will be easy to install a car seat, whether you're using the lower anchors or if you have to use the seatbelt, which eventually you will. As much as you, I'm sure, love your lower anchors right now, there is a limit on them and you will have to switch to a seatbelt installation. So knowing whether or not you can get a secure fit matters. But also thinking forward to as your children grow, there's a lot of rear seat safety technology in that vehicle that you won't necessarily get at the same price point in other brands. So things like there's that rear door alert. This is going to be something that reminds you or whoever is driving to check the back seat at the end of a trip. You have to enable the function, but it is well worth it. It's worth the peace of mind. There's rear belt minders. As your children get older, they're going to be booster age kids, or if you have any of the rear passengers, it will let you know if they unbuckle during a trip. There is actually side airbags, side torso airbags for the rear outboard passengers, as well as advanced seatbelt technology for the rear outboard passengers, like pretensioners and load limiters that will activate during a crash and, better protect your precious cargo in the back seat. So all those things combined would make it a vehicle that I would consider for my own family, because if I'm thinking to the future and, we have 2 kids, we like to go on trips with them. We like to especially during COVID, there's not a lot you can do. So going on drives is probably the funnest thing we're doing right now. But yeah. And, in our culture, everyone who's older than you is an auntie or an uncle. So Emily Auntie is looking out for the kids and trying to make sure they're going to have a good time in that car.
Great advice. I'm not even going to give mine. I'm just gonna move on to the next question because what can I offer here? What can I offer? Andy from Portland, Oregon asks, I live in a 1-car household, but I've been considering a second car for running errands around town. I enjoy small cars and want something unique, so I'm considering a Japanese K car. They appear to be inexpensive and are definitely interesting, but since US law doesn't let you import a car until it's at least 25 years old, I might be sacrificing some safety and parts availability. Is this a good idea for a cheap ancillary vehicle? So just in case you don't know, a K car, we're not talking about a Dodge Aries or a Plymouth Reliant here. This is KEI, and it has to do with the tax classification for vehicles in Japan, where basically the Japanese government was trying to encourage people to drive small, fuel-efficient cars that would fit in very densely populated areas. So these are cars that have to fit a particular dimension, and they also have to have a small engine. And as is the case often when artists and designers are given constraints, they come up with some really fascinating stuff. And some of these cars, like the AutoZam AZ1, has gull-wing doors. The Honda Beat. There were cars that they're vans. They're just unbelievable variety of vehicles for everyone. The only issue is that, as Andy says, these are small cars. They're not meant for highway driving. They're not meant for sharing roads with F-350s, let alone tractor trailers. And there are some safety concerns. To me, I mean, we were talking about this before the show, and Emily, you were sort of kind of down on the idea, right?
Well, when I looked up the pictures, because I'm not familiar with this particular type of car, they kind of reminded me of smart cars. And my concern there is, a smart car, even against another sedan, is still a tiny vehicle. And so it's not going to fare well. In general, if you're not going to be able to get a vehicle that is at par with the safety standards for the US, and, that is at par with the safety technology that's currently available, I would be hesitant, even just for myself, to drive around town. But I know that the two of you have more experience with these types of vehicles and, driving classics. And so, I imagine your perspective is different.
Well, I just recently brought one of the last 1988 Renault medallions into my own personal fleet. And John, I know you just took on a classic of your own.
I took on a 1988 Porsche 944 Turbo S. It's just incredible. I mean, going to what Emily was saying, and we'll get back to Andy's question, just in that the car is so small compared to a car of today. Just like if and I've seen pictures of the new Porsche 911, the current 2021, against a classic one, and it's just like you could fit two inside the footprint of one. So to the Andy's point, his question is, say he'll be sacrificing some safety. There's potential for a lot of safety, and that would be a concern of mine. Of course, zipping around town, a little thing, people drive Ford Festivas and Fiestas and stuff like that. Motorcycles, right? E-bikes. So, some of it is just going to be being very aware. I would be worried about the parts thing, but Keith, I know you talked about the scene and the availability too.
It's really good that you're in the Pacific Northwest, because Canada has a different rule on importing cars. It's not the 25-year rule. For them, it's 15 years. And as a result, there's a huge scene, especially because it's kind of cheap to import things from Asia into the West Coast. In British Columbia, there's a real huge scene for K cars, for JDM, for, Skylines, for all that sort of stuff. And as a result, you're close to a sort of treasure trove of parts. I don't know if a K car is the best idea, but maybe look into, something. If you're looking into a classic, if you have the opportunity, you could at least try driving one. And again, before you pay $2,000 to ship something over from Japan, see if you can find the local community and see if you can drive one and just see what it feels like. So whether it is 25-year-old Japanese classics or whether it is sensible cars for the family, send your questions to talkingcars@icloud.com. And head over to cr.org to learn more about the Polestar, learn more about Nissan strategies, learn more about backseat safety and child car seats. Thanks for talking cars with us. Talk again soon.